Well, hello, LinkedIn, X, Facebook, Twitch, and of course, YouTube. My name is Frank Lavinia, and you can catch me at the following URLs. And for a lot of folks, may not know that I have a podcast on quantum computing called Impact Quantum. Now, we did take a bit of a break, Andy and I. We took a bit of a extended hiatus, but we are relaunching the show. And don't worry, the dubstep theme song will still be back. Bailey will be our virtual MC. And I want to talk about the quantum elephant in the room. Um, so, obviously, one of the biggest shows of the year is happening right now in Las Vegas. So I think it might wrap up today. CES. And Jensen Huang is there, and he is, kind of a big deal. And it's important to take advice or heed the wisdom of someone who built one of the largest companies by certainly valuation and one of the most impactful chip companies basically ever. And it all started at a booth in a Denny's, as the story goes. So I don't want to discount his opinion. So let's get into the story right away. Let's talk about that. But while I pull that up, I wanted to put on a quick commercial for my book, which is now down to $7.99 for the Kindle version, and just a few dollars more for print. Grab yours today. So let me turn on the feed, and let's take a look. All right. So first off, I want to thank you, everyone. They got some chat messages here. Thank you. All right. So imagine my surprise when I heard that this happened. And a lot of people have been pinging me because, well, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, like it literally says, quantum engineer or whatever like that, or aspiring quantum engineer. So basically what Jensen said was something to the effect where to say it would take 15 years to get very simple quantum computers is an estimate that would be on the early side. But he still says it's 30 years away. It's probably 30 is on the late side, and 20 years seems more believable. First off, the controversy around this is twofold. One, obviously the stocks took a hit based on this. And this isn't news to a lot of people in the sense that if you're investing money into quantum, it's a long-term play, right? It is a multi-year effort. It's not going to be you're investing in the next Uber or Lyft or rideshare or social platform. It's a different animal, right? First off, you're dealing with hardware, right? Hardware alone has a significant lead time. As I like to tell people who have ideas that NVIDIA's de facto monopoly on GPUs is coming to an end because company X is doing this or company Y launched this. I like to point out that chip manufacturing is not as simple as software engineering goes, right? Microsoft puts out a new version of Office every so often, new version of Windows. Every so often, a new really good version of Windows, every other version release. But it's software, right? So like the updates of it, particularly in the age of the internet, is a lot more feasible, a lot more doable, right? So I could theoretically launch an e-commerce site today and have it up and running and do that in a matter of hours. A more complicated app for the phone or whatever, would take a bit longer, right? But the idea of it scaling out to a sustainable business where you can, basically turn a profit and, go public or get acquired, blah, 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 blah. The usual, startup caviar dreams and champagne wishes. Hardware's a little different, right? If you want to make hardware, particularly something as performant as a GPU, let's not even get into the quantum side of things yet. Hardware is a different animal, right? So if I got $1 billion of venture funding today, and I wanted to create a company that does, video cards or GPUs, right? And call it Frank Video. The time it takes for me to pour concrete, do the design, and build and I had the plans for the chip, like in my hand. The time it would take me to get the first batch of chips out is not trivial. And all the existing, fab facilities that people are using, like I think it's TS, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. So it's TSMC. Those are all booked out, and they do that. The smaller ones probably not as booked out, but if you're building something new, kind of cutting edge, look at Intel. Intel, when they launch a new generation of chips with different architectures, sometimes they have to build a new fabrication facility. So it's not trivial stuff. Not that software engineering is trivial, but there's a hardware component, right? And obviously, anytime you pour concrete, there's electricity, there's zoning laws, there's, chip manufacturing apparently is very water intensive. So you have to deal with a lot. Not a trivial process. And if everything goes well, and I mean like incredibly well, could be 6-7 years before the first chip rolls off the assembly line, right? Or comes out of the factory and basically is packaged and sold. If that's assuming everything goes perfectly, and really doesn't go perfectly, it's with this CHIPS Act and all the national security stuff going on, they estimate it's about a decade to get a fab facility kind of built from basically dirt in a field to a fully functioning thing. That also makes a lot of assumptions about NVIDIA and the existing thing going. Right, and that's conventional classical computing, right? Nothing fancy there. Quantum computing, I think, is a different animal, and it's a different animal for a lot of ways. One, look, Jensen Huang is going to be one of the most brilliant CEOs when they look back. People look back at the late 20th, early 21st century. His name will be up there with Bill Gates and Sergey Brin, as well as Steve Jobs. Certainly his presentation skills are, while not at Steve Jobs level, close enough. Like I said, if you watch the NVIDIA keynote from CES 2025 the other day, brilliantly done. The timing was impeccable. But this man also has a vested interest to the tune of trillions of dollars on keeping the status quo the status quo. So even though he's brilliant, even though he's this, when he says something like this, it's also self-serving, right? And a lot of people, basically he said, if you think it'll take 15 years, it'd be too soon to have a very simple quantum computer. But he says 30-year estimate is probably on the late side, but he thinks it's closer to 20 years. Let's go back in time 20 years. The future is hard to predict. 20 years ago, this was not a thing, right? Smartphones weren't really a thing. 20 years ago was 2004. Yeah, they had pocket PCs and Palm Pilots and things like that, but they were definitely nothing like what we have today. They weren't an application platform. They weren't a social media really didn't exist. And I just realized I have a meeting to go to.